Vandy fans can make a huge difference by taking back First Bank Stadium.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. On today's episode, we analyze how Coach Stiner can improve this team through the new strength and conditioning program. But before we get there, we will dive into the psychology behind home field advantage and how Vandy fans can help achieve that, because taking back First Bank Stadium is a way that Vandy fans can make a huge difference in this season. Now, what's important about this concept is that the fact that that's one of those missing pieces, because Vandy fans are always wondering, fans anywhere are always wondering, well, how can I make a difference? How can I make a difference? How can I make a difference? Well, understanding the psychology of how stadiums work from the player's perspective, I think goes a long way in figuring out that, hey, you can actually make a difference in this whole concept. So the psychology behind it, we'll look at two extremes, because Vandy is one of those extremes right now in football. In football, Vandy, it's become a home away from home for a lot of teams, right? The Georgias, the Tennessees, the Kentuckys, most of your SEC opponents are homes away from homes. And a lot of that is because Nashville is a destination. Is a vacation destination. So a lot of people come here to take part in Broadway and the country music scene and all of that stuff. So I think people want to come on vacation here regardless. So that factors in, of course, but also, Vandy fans opening up those seats to other fans creates an atmosphere. And I know it's about getting money and getting tickets, getting money for your tickets and all that stuff. And, I'll talk about the other side of that here in a minute. But like for Vandy fans, when they give up their seats, what they're doing is creating an environment that actually is detrimental to the team. Because when you have a stadium that's 80 to 90% full of opposing fans. Like the last time I went to a Vandy Georgia game, it was all red and black. I mean, it was all Georgia fans. And it was loud on third down. Like it was a Georgia home game in a different stadium. And for a team that's struggling, it's hard. The psychology of it is just, man, we're supposed to be at home. These are our home colors. This is our place. We didn't, all the home game ritual stuff that most teams get to enjoy, where it's a punishing place to play for other teams. Vandy does not get that same experience. It's actually punishing for Vandy all 12 games. Well, not all 12 games, because like Alcorn State's not going to bring a huge crowd, but all of the conference games, at least, and even some of the non-conference games, become so lopsided that it puts a lot of pressure, because now they're fighting the crowd where they don't have to. And that's very demoralizing. You're having to work on your road communication at home, which no one else has that problem. And when you make mistakes, like your crowd is supposed to be able to pump you up at home and be able to carry you through some of those mistakes, like get behind you, rally behind you and say, here we go. And that doesn't happen most of the time. And I think that's where this team kind of gets demoralized a little bit. And psychologically, I think it really does affect them. Like if you watch some of the games, especially against like the Auburn, I think the Auburn game where they were in it for a little while, but I think, that you make a couple of mistakes here and the crowd gets on you. And next thing you know, you fall apart because really, in reality, you're playing a road game. And the Tennessee game as well, like when Tennessee is in Nashville, it gets so overbearing that the pressure's just ratcheted up to a point that where it doesn't need to be. And the point where for Vandy, it doesn't matter if they're playing home away. They might as well play every game away because they're not getting that home field advantage. And so it is not a tough place to play. They're having to rely on a weird environment right now with the construction to really give themselves a chance. And it's really just not fair. If you look at some of those games where Vandy played well at the start, if they had a crowd that was jacked up, and I'm not blaming all of this on the fans, so don't get the idea in your head that I'm blaming all this on the fans. This is just a specific topic that I am talking about. But I think that some of those games that are like close, some of these conference games that are close, that fall apart. What if the crowd was flipped? What if it was majority Vandy fans in the crowd and they actually made it tough on the opponent? Just think like how, like part of home field advantage and what that means is that when you make a mistake as a road team, let's say you go to Kyle Field, okay, and you make a mistake as a visitor, just the wave of noise and pressure is weighing all on you. Even if you're the road favorite, all the pressure's on you because you're getting all of the backlash. You're getting all of the heat when you make a mistake. And when you make a mistake and you hear a crowd roar, that can be deflating. And if that's happening at home, just think about how extra deflating that is. And this is more of like I think for Vandy fans, and it goes two ways. Like Vandy needs to give fans something to root for. I get that. And they should put a better product out on the field. But again, it kind of like feeds into each other. Like they're working, and Vandy fans fans have a part in games. It's a small part, but they have a part. They play a role in the season. When you're hosting, your job as a fan base is to make it, no matter how bad your team is to make it hell on the other team. That is the job of the fans. No matter how bad you are, you're supposed to be there making it hell for your fans. Like, look at Auburn. Okay, I'll give you Auburn. Auburn is a roller coaster. But what's not a roller coaster is that environment. It's always packed. Unless there's some like weird circumstance. But it's always packed. And it's always hostile towards road teams. Always. They could be, there was one year they were 4-8, but every game was packed out. And every game they lost was tight until they fell apart. Right? But the fans didn't falter. Now I think ultimately they made a change at the head coach. And, they took they held the head coach accountable and all that stuff. And, but like part of what makes college football is the fact that like, if you walk into Death Valley, it's going to be hell. It's going to be awful for you as a road team. You're going to be miserable. It's going to be overbearing. It's going to be overwhelming. It is supposed to spike your senses to a point of like you're into a frenzy. Like, why do you think Iowa wins as much as they do? It ain't because they're good it ain't because they're good on offense. But when they play you at home, their fans are right on top of you. They suffocate you with pressure and noise and just stress. And they end up winning with a pitiful offense. and a defense that holds up with that. And then all their losses seem to come on the road, where they are now the recipients of all that. Same with any team in the conference. Like Mississippi State, they may not win a whole lot of games because they're just not as talented as the teams they're playing a lot of times. But when they do win, they mostly win at home. Their environment is tough with all the cowbells. It's oppressive. It's oppressive environment. It's an oppressive environment on the field because they're right there on top of you and they're right there just in your face when you screw up. And you just feel the pressure of 65,000 people on top of you when you're on the road. Vandy doesn't have that environment. And it's a smaller stadium, I get it, but it's a very it's close. Like you're in there. And I think if Vandy ever got to a point to where they could make that as hostile of a place as they can, they might be able to in the future be able to renovate the bowl section to where they start to kind of go up a little bit with it and maybe go more vertical and maybe trap some of that noise in there. They're closing in with the end zone project stuff, so maybe some of that noise stays in where normally it wouldn't. So maybe you have some advantages there, but you just Vandy fans, I think it would be of your benefit. It would be of benefit to create that home field advantage for the team, because that's a piece that they need. Okay, that's a morale booster. That's something that when you're playing well and your crowd is behind you, you get that extra energy bump. Now you're not so tired in the fourth quarter. Now you finish these games. Like when James Franklin was here, those environments were good. They won because of it. It wasn't all because of the environment, but it played a big factor. Like fans created a hostile environment for road teams in those years because James Franklin did his part and had the team playing at a high level, and the fans did their part by supporting it. And I think if one side can show the other side, I think you will notice that this team actually does play hard. And I think if you do start coming back into First Bank Stadium, the team will notice that and they'll play even harder. Because if it's going to be all orange, it's going to be a road game. Everybody, they go into a home game knowing everybody hates them because it's all orange. What is that psychologically? Just think about that. And I get, and again, Vandy needs to give the fans something to cheer about. Last season was unacceptable. They need to give the fans something to support. I get it. We'll talk more about how that can happen next. All right, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Did you know that Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier? Prices on Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. So what I saw last night was there was featured sections for a Sounds game. It was a really cool deal. What I loved about it was there was last minute deals. You could save 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, even up to, I think, 30 minutes to an hour after the game. They still had deals going on. So that's awesome. They have flash deals as well. You save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of a game or event. Zone deals, you save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. All-in pricing. You can toggle this feature and it shows you total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Gametime has the lowest ticket price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, which is a huge deal. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN and you're tired of all that shouting? You have to turn your TV down even? Well, you need to make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And shout out to the everydayers. Without you guys, none of this is possible. Absolutely fired up to be doing this show each and every day for you guys. So continue to pass the word. This thing is growing and growing and growing, and I appreciate you guys dearly. So talking home field advantage, okay? How can Vandy fans take back First Bank Stadium? It's something that needs to happen. And Vandy fans need to take back Memorial Gym too, because Memorial Gym was once a very difficult place to play. It is not anymore. And I think because of the changes, it will be again. And I believe the same thing for First Bank Stadium. I think it can happen. I think it's important. I think it would be a huge boost to the team if it did happen. Okay. And to me, all the changes that we've talked about, Jerry Kill coming in, Tim Beck, new system, Diego Pavia, transfer portal guys, rebuilding the offensive line, rebuilding the secondary, Clark Lee taking over at DC, Coach Stiner with his new strength program that we'll talk about in a few minutes. All of that, I think it's lent itself to a team that wants to put a better product out there on the field. And I think that you will. This team will have an identity. They will play hard. They will play physical. They will be more explosive. But I think it's time to make this thing the best environment that it can be. Both sides. And I think the football team's doing their part, making sure that they have a way better product. And just judging, even just reading what I'm reading and hearing what I'm hearing, it's already 10 times better than it was last year. I just think the attitudes alone are better than they were last year. And the secret weapon is, of course, Jerry Kill. All right. But I think the new rules in college football are going to allow Vandy to it's going to equalize a little bit. I think it's going to allow Vandy to be a lot more competitive. I think there's a lot of factors involved here. So to me, honestly, the last piece of all of this is the fans coming back and the fans not letting First Bank Stadium be all burnt orange in mid-October. Not allowing it to be a Roll Tide fest on October 5th. Allowing it to not be checkerboard in the season finale. Right? I think what you'll notice is a monster difference. I promise you, the psychology of it, you will notice a monster difference in the way the team plays. When you do come out there and support, it makes a massive difference. Look at what's happened in basketball. Look at some of the biggest upsets that the basketball team has pulled in the last few years. It's because of the fans. Not all because of the fans, but just take note of the atmosphere, right? Just think of how those things play out, and think of the pressure that you can create for the other team because you're right there on top of them. You're right there. Just make sure that they know that you're there and make it hell on them. And I think you'll see a team that'll perform. So just picture this, okay? And like I said, the team is working tremendously hard, and they've got some talented guys. But just think about this, right? You've got a tie game about mid fourth quarter, early fourth quarter. So the 10, 9, 8 minute mark, somewhere in that range. All right. 2 plays happen. All right. Just think about first play that happens. Road team scores a touchdown, goes ahead. Okay. Now, there's two ways it could play out. If it was a true home crowd, they would still rally behind the team. They would still cheer the team. They would still get behind and try to urge the team down. Whether Vandy performed or not, whether they executed or not is a different story. But I think you would find that this team would still try to make everything difficult for the opposing team. Now, let's make that same play, because I think Vandy would have had a better chance. I think Vandy would have a better chance with a crowd that's behind them to make that comeback, because you get a team that gets a couple of first downs and now the crowd's jacked back up a little bit. And now they're starting to recreate pressure. Like that's why a lot of home teams, when they strike back, it's a lot easier for a home team to strike back because of the crowd. Because the crowd reapplies that pressure, even if it's deflated for a little bit, they start to reapply that pressure, and that's when you hear the phrase, that they just folded, and insert home team here ended up winning. Right? That's how that happens, is you get an atmosphere where the team starts to apply pressure, and then the fans start to apply pressure on top of that. The fans start to pick up on the fact that, okay, maybe the team on the field is applying the pressure. Now maybe they're starting to kind of take it back to them, and now we've got to make sure that we reciprocate. So all of it kind of ties in together. And so now just think about that same scenario. The crowd erupts when the road team scores a touchdown. The crowd erupts and it's loud and they're going nuts. And who do you think the pressure is applied on? It would be Vandy. Now Vandy's got to fight that crowd to be able to go down and score. That's a lot of pressure. So do your part. If you can, do your part. Be in the stadium, be active. If I had tickets, I'd be there, but I don't have tickets. All right. But do your part. I think you'll start to see some results. I think you'll start to see a team that plays a lot better. And if they lose, it'll be because the team they're playing against is just simply overwhelmingly more talented, like in Alabama or Texas. I think some of these borderline games will go in their favor if they have the crowd in their favor. So we'll see. We'll see how that all shakes out. Vandy has a chance. The SEC has the best fans in the world, and Vandy fans are really good, and they can be really good when they're at their peak. But again, Vandy's got to give them something. They got to give them something, and I think this new strength program will help. I'm excited about the strength program. It will help. It will help Vandy last longer and compete harder. We'll dive into the specifics next. All right, welcome back. Third and final segment. Wrapping up the show here. It is the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. Shout out to the everydayers. Make sure you make Locked On SEC your next listen. Make sure you make Locked On Auburn, who I've got set up with a crossover tomorrow. That's going to be a lot of fun with Zach Blackerby. So keep all of that on your radar. It's going to be a lot of fun. So talking about we talked about home field advantage. Talked about how Vandy fans can make it a true home field environment. How Vandy needs to help the fans make it a true home field environment by playing well. So how can they do that? Well, I think one of the foundational pieces is strength and conditioning, and we haven't really talked a lot about strength and conditioning and what that means. And really what strength and conditioning has become is more of an overall training program at this point, right? Because you have the aspects, you have the strength aspect, you have the conditioning asset, you have agility, speed, nutrition, flexibility, spiritual health, emotional health, and recovery. So you have those aspects, right? And all of those play into the overall total player, right? Because you're training them. Because if they're strong, they're obviously going to perform better on the field. If they're conditioning, they will last longer. If they are more agile and faster, they will be more competitive with their peers. If they have better mental health, they'll be able to respond to adversity and have that competitive spirit in the face of adversity, especially on the road. And they'll be able to handle these tough conditions that they're going to be thrown into. Emotional health, again, that plays into being able to handle adversity and being able to maintain your composure. Flexibility, obviously, helps with the injury prevention stuff, as does the strength and conditioning helps with injury prevention. Recovery, being able to recover faster will help injury prevention and will be able to help stamina throughout the course of a game. They'll be able to last longer. And then spiritual health and emotional health, again, will help them with the rigors of balancing academic life with being basically a professional football player. So just all of those things, building the total player, will make them an overall better athlete, better student, better human. And so that's what they're aiming towards, because all of it ties in together. And if they can play better for longer, be more competitive, all that stuff, if they improve in all those areas, and diet as well, if they can eat better, if they can fuel better, all of that kind of goes into the total training program. I think you will start to see a better, tougher, more resilient program on the field. You will have something to root for, I promise you. Because if they buy into what Coach Stiner is preaching and the program that he's providing, which I'm almost 100% sure that they are buying in, a lot of them are complaining about it being terrible, which Coach Steiner's doing it right if they're complaining about it. But they're all bought in. The competitiveness I've noticed just even in these social media clips that you don't really see regularly, because I don't think they were doing anything exciting last year. I'm really convinced, because you didn't see anything about this team except them getting their brains beat in, which, I mean, honestly, I don't blame the fans for not going and see that. That was pitiful last year. But I think you're starting to see more clips on social media. They're starting to show off a little bit more. They're starting to compete, right? There's competitive reps. There's things to show them getting after it in their off-season training. They're showing off, they're going to start to show off some of the stuff that they do with nutrition. They're going to start to show off their academic stuff, which has been a huge pillar of what Vanderbilt's all about. They're going to start to show off this new attitude, and this new attitude of tough, competitive, resilient, and they're striving to get to that point where they're equal. They're not there yet because they fell so far behind. They've got a lot of ground to make up in NIL, training, scheme, all of it, the whole 9 yards, which is why the infrastructure was knocked down in the first place, right? It took Clark Lee 4 years into his tenure to do so, but he did. And I think they're going to see a lot of benefit from that. And truthfully, all of that stuff kind of plays into them being able to put a watchable product, a supportable product out on the field. Okay. And trust me, I get it. I get it. You want to, you're paying money. You obviously don't want to see a crap product. I get that. But I think this year's team is going to give you something to watch. And I think the strength program is providing the foundations for all of that, because if you're too tired to grasp the concept, there's no point in learning it. You're not going to execute. If you're not strong enough to execute the scheme, if you're not strong enough to make the blocks or break the tackles or whatever, it's not going to work. if you're not fueling your body and you're constantly with the training staff trying to heal your injuries, none of this matters. And I think injury prevention is going to be a big emphasis in this program. And I think, that's my guess is you're going to see more guys lasting longer throughout the season. You're going to see guys not be completely exhausted in the fourth quarter to the point where there's mental bust after mental bust. There's dumb play calls. There's, even the coaches are probably going through some mental training too, because they have to be able to last. I know it's grueling to be able to last in a season where you're struggling. I know it's grueling. Just in general, it's grueling. But, I think that being able to work out, being able to get stronger, being able to be in condition. If you're not fast enough, it doesn't matter what coverages you play. You're going to get burned by Barryon Brown at Kentucky, right? Or the quartet of receivers that are coming in on August 31st that are going to be superb, right? It doesn't matter. If you're not fast enough, you're not fast enough, right? And part of this training program is building all of those aspects, being able to bend and contort your body to make a play on a ball as a corner is of vast importance. To be able to coil up into a stance as an offensive lineman, being flexible enough to do that creates explosiveness. And if you can explode into a block, it makes up for a little bit of strength deficiency, being able to be explosive. So all that plays into being a better overall player. And all of that is everything that's happened is taking a step in the right direction to ensure that this team is as strong as possible in all aspects of being a human, mental, emotional, spiritual, physically, and then, of course, cardiovascularly and muscle endurance and agility and speed-wise too. So physiologically better as well. So to make those improvements, I think are going to go a long way in providing a product that is supportable, and it's going to allow Vandy fans to feel better about doing their part, which people know they can affect games, but doing their part to do so will really, really help out. So that being said, that's all we got. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you like what you heard, at Coach Burton 36 is my personal Twitter account, at Locked On Vandy. On all socials, if you want to follow the show, like, subscribe, all that stuff. But until next time, we'll see you back here tomorrow. And as always, behave yourself and anchor down. Anchor down.